Have you ever wanted to throw a large bowl, but you thought it was too difficult to even try? Well, I'm here to tell you it's actually easier than it looks. I'm going to show you a way to throw these bowls that works anywhere from 1 pound all the way up to 10. So if that's something that you want to see, stick around and find out how we make this 4-pound bowl. So in this week's video, I'm going to show you how to throw a big bowl like this out of 4 pounds of clay. It is about 10 inches wide by 5 inches tall currently, so it'll be a little bigger after we throw it out of wet clay. I'm going to show you guys how to get texture on it, and then maybe in the next video I can show you guys how I like to trim the foot on this big bowl. So let's go ahead and clear this area and let's get our clay down. Alright, we got our clay, we got our bat, our wheel set up, all our tools. Let's get this down and centered as always. So we take the clay, roll it around to create a point, and then hit it down into the middle. And then for larger amounts like this, because this is 4 pounds, I'm not going to actually start the whole centering process with water just yet. I'm going to do something called slap centering, which you may have seen in other videos, where I'm spinning the wheel slowly, and then I'm just slapping it with an equal rhythm to get it not only stuck to the wheel head, but to also get it a little lower. And so this is really helpful when you start throwing larger amounts, because once you get this technique down, you can actually see it's fairly centered already. Now the bottom is slightly off, like right here, it's protruding out further than the opposite side, so you could manually just push that inward, or you just squeeze with your hands like this. So squeeze centering instead of tap centering. And then you go back to tapping, and it's actually pretty close to being centered. So now I actually can start my centering steps. So I already did the push it down, that was part of slap centering. I'm going to seal the edge at 3 o'clock. And then I'm going to push it down one more time to get it stuck. So add water at this point. And then I take my sponge. And then one thing on the sponge that I want to kind of make a note. This sponge is from those big grout sponges, or the ones you use for car washing. And what I do is I cut it into 6s. And so after I cut into 6s, so divide it down here, here, and across, I get 6 of these guys. Then I take this and I cut that in half, and I get one of these. I find that this size is perfect for throwing because you can't get too much water on it, which is good. And then you can put it in between your fingers like this, and it's going to allow you to hold the sponge, have moisture on it, and center and do what you need to do without having to constantly add water. And the nice thing is when I have my water, I can just take my hand and dip it, and it's already perfectly ready to go. And I just squeeze like that if I squeeze too much. So, nice little tidbit. All right, anyway, let's push it down. Get that cone established again. Squeeze in from the sides, get it coned up. Getting a little dry, so add some water.
If you're enjoying these videos, please don't forget to like and subscribe.
And then the skirt right here, it's a little too far out for me. So squeeze out the extra water from the sponge. Really drive this downwards with my middle finger to create this little ledge here. This ledge is perfect, or groove is perfect for my pinky to sit into, my left pinky. And now I'm going to go ahead and cone down. I'm doing a variation of the karate chop. So instead of pushing my right, I'm pushing down with my left diagonal down. And my right hand is just squeezing on the sides to make sure that as it goes downwards, this right hand is ensuring that I'm squeezing inward to make sure nothing mushrooms out. Alright, and then that's more or less centered. So the setup for this bowl. Oftentimes when you folks see people throw bowls, you may see it where they throw it and they're starting to shape and pull at the same time, creating the curve. Now that is totally fine, it's really efficient, but as you're learning how to throw, especially bigger pieces, I always recommend you set your foundation by digging your well, creating that flat floor, creating a perfect wall, and then shaping from there. It does create a little transition between the L and the corner. So you can see with these cutouts, this is what I always make first, and then I shape. It does create a harder transition at the corner here because you're gonna have to round that out, and I'll show you that later on in the video. You could throw it like this where you don't really have a true corner, but it's a lot harder to then pull the clay because you have this clay in the way, the slope, and you can't really squeeze. So I always recommend throwing it this direction and then shaping, because you maximize the clay, you can easily pull all of that upwards. And then the setup, the width. Basically, the width, you shouldn't go too much wider than what you want the base of your bowl to be. I don't want my bowl too wide because it's going to look stubby. I want a little more narrow and then more rounded, elegant up, like how you saw in the intro. So with 4 pounds, I'm going to get it to roughly around 5 to 6 inches wide. Right now it's around 6, maybe 6.5. Okay, let's go ahead and dig our well. So I take my thumbs, put it on top, and then I'm pushing downward using the slip on my hands to add lubrication. Using the slip on the pot itself. So adding lubrication when I can to reduce the amount of water. Okay, now I'm digging in a way that isn't the best for beginners because my elbows are elevated. So when you guys dig your well, it's best to rest it up against a splash pan to dig. Now when you throw taller, it might be a little difficult to really get that angle in without having your arms lift up from that surface. So another way to dig, which I showed in briefly in some other videos, is you can brace with one hand, use the middle or the pointer or the ring in your other hand, and push down with that. So this hand most likely will be elevated, but this hand will be braced up against something. Or you can flip it where you have your right hand bracing and your left hand digging. And then as you do this, just one thing to remember, you want your thumb open so you can rest that up against your digging hand. And you're not really digging straight down, you're digging kind of diagonally forward. And that will automatically go deeper. And just be mindful of your depth because you don't want to go more than what you're aiming for, the 1/2 inch thickness in this case. Now I'm ready to open. So opening, the way I like doing it, I actually just squeeze the clay with my left hand like this. All right, so I changed my angle. So now this is my midnight. It's actually pointed closer to my 1 o'clock. And now we can kind of see my outside hand or my left hand when I pinch and squeeze. And so now I'm ready to open. So like I said, there's a lot of ways to open. You can use your thumbs on the inside and pull apart. You can have your thumbs on the inside and pull towards midnight. You can pull towards your body, or you just use one hand and squeeze. And that's the way that I like doing it, the pinch and pull. You can see that my ring finger right here, or my middle finger right here, is at the very bottom. And then my pointer finger is on the outside. And I'm going to be pulling my inside fingers here towards me. My pointer finger is draped over, kind of like spread eagle across the clay wall. And that's to help to keep it stable. So that's the inside hand, my left hand. And my right hand with the sponge is going to be pushing in at the base here underneath my thumb. So actually I'm going to shift even more so you can really see how my hands work. So now I shifted my body over. Let's get the speed going. Okay, and let's go ahead and open. You can see my thumb here is behind the sponge. So I'm going to be pushing in at the base. I'm going to start opening. I'm going to add a little water as needed. Okay, so I'm establishing my outside edge right here. So I'm opening. And so the benefit of doing this technique is you can open and then pull right away. So I'm going to get a little wider. Outside hand with the sponge really pushing in at the base. You can see it getting narrower. And I can see the clay getting wider on the inside. And now there's a lot of clay building up between my left pointer finger and my middle finger. So then I start to pull. And start releasing the pressure right here. Leave it there for a few seconds, let the clay catch up, and then release. So you can see that open and pull technique is a very efficient way to get your first pull and opening at the same time. So I got it substantially taller. And now I'm ready to start getting this a little narrower and then getting a little taller to then start shaping. So I'm going to color this in a little bit, at least the rim, since I'm going to throw it into a cylinder. And I'm going to straighten this out. And then I'm going to do a normal pull. So left hand in, right hand out. I push out, push in, pull up. So this is my 3 o'clock right here. So the first thing I want to do is push this skirt in. You can remove any clay crumbs, or I call it goodies. Remove any goodies. And then I'm going to establish the indent on the outside. This is where I'm going to be pushing in with my outside hand, the sponge. So it's always helpful to establish this first before you start the pull, because you can really focus on that. All right, so let's get some water in. So the way this mechanic works, I push out, push in, pull up. Hands are offset, so it looks more like this. Push out, push in, pull up. And the way I hold the sponge in my right hand, I call it the chef kiss, because you're putting your hands like this. Yeah, like you're doing those chef kiss I don't know, memes or videos. And then I just put the sponge between it, and then I'm applying pressure with my pointer finger right here through to this side. So my sponge hand, my thumb moves down a little bit. Okay, so instead of having it like this, chef kiss, I bring my thumb back. So it's like this, and then I'm pushing with that. Okay, here we go. Let's do the next pull. And then for bowls or anything you throw with a really wide opening, one thing you always have to remember is you gotta keep your rim a little thicker, because as you stretch the clay, it will get thinner naturally. So just make sure you remember that, because if you throw it too thin or it's the same thickness from top to bottom, like how this cylinder is, the rim is gonna get much, much thinner than the bottom, and it's not gonna be that functional because it's gonna be so thin. All right, anyway, enough talking. Let's go ahead and do this. So now I'm gonna start pushing outwards with the inside hand. You can see this bump forming. That's exactly what I want. Now I'm going to be pushing in with the outside hand. This time using my middle fingers and my pointer finger, more leverage. And then I'm going to start lifting that clay upwards with both hands. So both hands are offset. And then right around here, I start releasing the pressure. I can stick my thumb out. And then I'm going to still go up, but I'm going to keep my rim a little thicker. So in this case, about 1/2 inch thick. So I'm going to thin this out just a tad bit, but not too much. I gently release. All right, so 2 pulls. I got my cylinder about 6 inches tall. I can probably do 1 more pull if I want. And so if you're wondering, how thick is my clay walls? You can visually see it at the rim, but I do know that below it is a little thinner. So one little tip that I've been showing you guys across videos is you take your needle, basically stab it into the clay wall, have your inside hand meet the needle tip, pinch the needle where it touches the wall and pull it out. That's how thick it is. So you can see on the top it's about 3/4. Let's check the middle. So it's about 3/8. Let's go check at the bottom. So I pushed a little too far. There we go. About 1/2. So I can definitely do 1 more pull. So I'm going to go ahead and then get my clay a little hydrated. And then same steps. Push out, push in, and pull up. Keeping my hands offset for the initial movement. So I push in at the base, then I push out with my inside hand, and then I start the pull here. I can definitely feel the clay thin out. That's exactly what I want. Okay, and then sneak my thumb out. And then releasing the pressure at the rim, leave it there for a few seconds, and then release. All right, so now it's about 7 inches tall, so I gained about 1 inch. That was the 3rd pull. And I'm gonna check for thickness 1 more time, and then I might need to do 1 more pull, so we'll see. So let's check down here first. Pardon the airplane flying above. So we got about 3/8. A little more than 1/4 in the top. So I'll do 1 more pull, and then we'll get this to shape. And so you might be wondering, like, how the hell am I going to transform this tall cylinder into a bowl? Just wait, I'm going to show you. Let's do 1 more pull. And this time, let's say you want to get used to shaping pulls. If you want to do a shaping pull, now's the time to do it, where you push out, push in, and then when you pull up, you're actually pushing outwards a tad bit. So I'm going to show that just a little bit, just to kind of get some volume in here so you guys can kind of see how we're going to get this tall cylinder into a wide bowl. Okay, so I push in. Oh, you actually need to push in too far because I don't want the base getting too small. So I start pushing out. You can see that bump out forming. And now I'm going to do the pull. And you can start seeing the shape develop. So it's almost like an orb vase. And then right around here, I'm releasing the pressure, but I'm still kind of bringing it outwards. And then when I get to the very top, not really applying too much pressure, I'm just going to bring my hand outwards to then flare this and getting it ready to shape. All right, so now we kind of have this weird hybrid shape. It has a nice round bottom. If I were to close the top, I basically made a moon vase, but I want to make it into a bowl. And so I kind of showed you that general shaping. This is kind of far out. I wouldn't want to push it too much further out with any more shaping. And from here, I just will expand it even more. But actually, I want to go back. I'm going to take away this roundness because I'm going to show you how to shape it from a cylinder. And so the cool thing about clay is if you add some water, and you add pressure where you need it to go. So this time I'm pushing in. So pushing in like this. This is a type of collaring. And I lift the clay up. And then collar in. You can basically get it back to the original shape. So I'm going to push this in a little more. Really squeeze that base so it gets narrow again. There we go. And then bring my thumbs together. Alright, so I got it back to more or less a cylinder. It does flare out a little bit at the top, but that's fine because you want it to flare like that. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of even out this clay on the inside because shaping it did make it a little protrude out too much. But let's say this is our shape, which for beginners, I do recommend you start from this shape. Now we're ready to start actually shaping the piece. And so oftentimes you may start shaping from the bottom, push out, and then work your way up. But for bigger bowls, especially taller cylinders like this, I do recommend you open the top a little more first before you start shaping the bottom, because it's really easy to push out the bottom. And as you push out and you go further and further, you may blow out the bottom too much and it collapses on yourself, especially if it's thinner. So to help alleviate that, if we stretch this out a little more, then the weight can be distributed further out, and then we start working on the middle section and then the bottom. So it looks something like this. So to open this up, the easiest way I like doing it, you just take your fingers, you kind of spread it out and like this, like pinching motion, spread it out, and then you open and pull outwards like this. And this will get you a nice, even, easy flare. Okay. Another way, if that's a little too hard for you, you can have one hand on the outside, one hand on the inside, and you just kind of tilt your hands. And this will also get you a flare. And so pre-shaping the top kind of helps just distribute the weight a little better. And then I work as a step system. I can go a little lower here and start pushing this out if I want with that same hand motion. And then kind of flaring outwards to get this V shape. All right, so that's to establish this top. And now I can start shaping below it. So you need a few things to help you shape. You can use a normal rib, which is very common. If you bought clay kits, oftentimes it comes with this shape. I'm not the most fond of this one because it is a little big for my hand, and I'm not a fan of this point on the inside. So I do like these ones. I'll have the link in my description to purchase it. But for beginners, the one thing that I always teach and recommend is actually using a rice paddle to shape, because this is a lot easier for you to hold. You can hold it with two hands very easily, and it just covers more surface area in the beginning. And so I'm going to show you guys how I like shaping with the rice paddle. And so with the rice paddle, when you're beginning, I do recommend you hold it in your hands like this, where you grip one hand and then wrap with the other. The scoop side or the front side should be facing away from you. You never want it straight down. You want it slightly angled towards you and you push it out. So I'm going to get this wet. And so the first thing I want to shape is not the very bottom. I'm going to shape right here. Get this shape going from inverted to more of a curve before I adjust the bottom. So I hold it with both hands. I'm applying pressure right here where it goes from straight to vertical. And when I'm looking, my eyes are looking right here on the outside. So if you can, anchor your elbows. So I'm pushing out right there. You can hear it scraping against the clay. You see that bump forming. Then I start bringing it up. And then I'm not going to get it too much wider than the rim currently is, because I'm just trying to even out the shape, get that V, that angle more or less the same all the way through. Any clay that comes off, remove it, and then put it into your goodies container. All right, and then we repeat again. So this time I'm going to go a little lower, and this time I'm going to go from here, push out and lift up. So right here I'm going to push. There's the bump forming. Now I'm lifting it up. And then you can take a hand away if you want to then support the rim as you stretch and adjust going upwards from there. And then I release. So right now you may see it from the top that I have this weird little bump here, this transition. And so this is what I was talking about in the beginning of the video, where the hardest part about throwing a cylinder into a bowl is getting rid of this transition. And we'll get there eventually. But right now we're trying to get this more into more of a bowl shape. So now that this curve is getting established, I want to flare this out even more. So I'm going to go back to that original technique with my kind of spread out pointer finger and thumb, and then kind of pull this out to open it to get it more flared. Now, the reason why we didn't want a wide bottom is because now, as we're flaring this out even more, if this bottom was too wide, it would just start collapsing on itself, especially if it's thin. So when you're beginning, this is the most easy way to approach it. Open the top and then work your way. Now, once you get comfortable with the rice paddle, you can hold it in your left hand, kind of like this. 4 fingers on the top, thumb on the bottom. You're gonna push out, and then your hand right here is gonna support the clay wall. So it looks something like this. So now I'm gonna push out here. You see right here, that's where the tool is pushing out. And I slowly start lifting up. And as it gets to the top, my outside hand's not really doing much, but right now at the top, I'm pushing this inward a little bit to make sure that this doesn't flare out too wide, and it keeps a vertical shape. All right, and then I'm slowly getting that bowl shape. Right now, it's like kind of in between a planter / bottom of a vase. So I just got to keep repeating that over and over again. Another way to flare the top, if you're getting really used to the rice paddle, put your hand on the outside below where you want to flare, rice paddle at the top, and you're just pushing this outwards. And it's creating this little like step here, kind of like triumphant vase rims, or like a bell. So now, you see from the overhead cam, it's a little easier to get into this little transition, this bump. So now I can actually get the rice paddle into that spot if I want. So I don't want to push it straight in. I kind of want to go in at a slight angle like this. And I want to slowly turn it and then work my way up. So start from here, slowly turn it to match the shape. And now I'm looking at the inside where the rice paddle is touching. And I'm slowly working my way up. And as I'm working my way up, now I can then shift my head to look on the outside to see how the wall is transitioning from the base to the rim. And then right here is where that weird step rim was, and I'm really pushing out there. Outside hand is supporting the rim. And I'm kind of pushing it out even more to create a new step. And then we just keep repeating until we get the bow shape. So like I said, very beginner friendly. It does take a lot of repetition, but as long as you work slowly, so I'm working at the bottom again, as long as you work slowly and methodically, you can definitely shape this bowl into a large orbish or half dome shape. All right, now getting much closer. This width is pretty good. I want to add more volume to here before I open this top up. But let's check the width real quick of the top, just to kind of see where I'm at. And I'm at about 9 inches. I should be able to get it closer to 10 by the time I'm done. But I want to push this bottom out a little more. Now I gotta be careful because once this gets really bowed out, it has a chance of slumping or sagging. So I don't want to push the bottom out too far. So I'm going to go slightly above it and start pushing out over there. Still looking at the outside. So now I'm getting more volume at the round bottom section. And then just transitioning it all the way to the top. And you can see that my rim went from this thick 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch thick wall to almost a 1/4 inch now. So we're getting closer and closer to the final thickness and shape. Now I'm going to show you another tip on shaping using a metal rib. So I got these nice flexible metal ribs. I think it's stainless steel, just really thin. And you can use this on the outside to support and contour to the shape while you apply inwards pressure. So it looks something like this where you push and then you go up. So this helps remove any unwanted wobbles. You can see that wobble on the bottom. Let's see if we can get it a little more even using the rib to help compress that clay wall in that spot. So we're going to push out a little more here. So we're scraping the outside. And working my way up. And then adjusting the rim right here. All right, so now it's getting that really nice elegant curve. Having some wobbliness at the top, I can cut that down later. So let's see the dimensions. Okay, so we're on 9.5. around 5 inches tall. And so now, because I like the shape more or less, I want to be careful with this curve. If I bump this out anymore, it may collapse on itself. So I want to focus on this transition on the inside, which you can't see right here. Now we're going to switch to more of the overhead cam. So you can see from my transition, it looks really odd because it goes from deep here, kind of rises up, flattens here, and then this weird transition. So I'm going to use the rice paddle to then kind of flatten this bottom. So kind of pushing down where I don't want that high points. And then I'm going to start working on this transition, but I want to get the bottom kind of situated first. And my base is kind of thin, so if I want to thicken that up, you could, I should have done this before, but you could take your sponge, push down, make sure that there's actually the base right here, so that's the base, push down on the taller side, and kind of push this clay towards the thinner side. Now, like I said, I should have done this before I started pulling my walls up, because it is a little risky doing it now. You always run the chance of your clay collapsing on yourself when you're playing around with the inside and you're applying pressure where it shouldn't go. Here we go. Thickened it up without having to add any too much clay. All right, now the hardest transition from here to here. I gotta bump that out and push that out. And so I'm gonna use my rice paddle again. And sometimes it's better to do that before you get this too flared out. But I'm gonna take this tool, with my right hand, I'm gonna support the clay wall here because I don't want this bumping out too much. And I'm just gonna start kind of bringing this upward to kind of soften that transition. So my outside hand is supporting the clay wall. And I'm not really pushing inward, I'm just keeping it there in case I push too far out with my inside hand. And after a few passes, this was the second pass, you can see the transition is a little more curved, a little more elegant. If I want to take it up a notch and be a little more aggressive, I can switch to the metal rib, use the curved side at this part here, and it's almost like trimming. It's going to take off more clay. So it's actually removing more clay without distorting the outside shape. So it took off about that much clay. And I keep repeating that until that transition is a little more in line with what I want it to be. So whenever I'm doing these transitions, I'm always trying to get an elegant curve from wall to wall. Imagine like a half pipe or a nice half circle. Okay, so pushing out. Now, as I'm going a little higher above the base, so on the inside it was coming out to here, this is starting to bump out a little more. And so I really got to support that bottom here. So I'm going to use the whole section now to now adjust this inside clay wall. That way you can easily adjust where I want it to go. And then the transition is starting to really come into play and become a lot easier and even. There we go. Nice even transition from wall to wall. And I'm going to add a little more roundness to the bottom and kind of transition it upwards. And of course, when I do it this time, I'm making sure I'm holding the rib because the clay wall is getting kind of thin. It's getting kind of wobbly. If I don't support from the outside, this can easily just get more and more wobbly. All right, so really kind of tilting my head. I'm angled now. I'm looking at the bottom here, seeing how that angle plays. So supporting that, getting a little more of a roundness here. So the rib on the outside is just conforming to the shape of the wall and scraping off any high spots and uneven spots to reduce any wobbles that may be present. So after that shaping pass, I can see from my monitoring cam, it's a lot less wobbly. The rim, of course, is still a little bit, but it doesn't look like it's as unruly. Now looking from the inside, this transition right here, I'm not really liking how steep that is. So I want to push that further out. And looking at the outside of the clay, it does look like it can handle. Now, I did throw this with a really narrow base, so if I had a little more clay out here, it wouldn't be as steep. So depending on what you want, if you want a wider base and a more elegant and a more natural curve, then throw it wider. All right, here we go, one more time. And this time, I'm actually switching to the rib because the rib has a nicer, longer curve that can really go into that. And this matches each other a little better. So that's why having a rib is also good. Okay, dip that in water. Here we go. Get it into the spot. So kind of eyeballing where I want to push out. So right there, I want to push out a little more. So not at the very base, but kind of about an inch or two up from the bottom. And now let's transition going upwards to even that out. All right, so now I'm ready to cut the rim to make it level. So I'm taking my needle tool, pressing up against my leg. You can see I'm anchoring. And then left hand on the inside to support. Scoring a line on the outside and slowly pushing that needle until it touches my inside hand. And then normally when I lift up, it pulls off and cuts with me, but I got a little too excited and it sliced through it rather than lifting, but by gently peeling it away, it actually cut cleanly. So now I just get a sponge, kind of drape it over the rim just to soften that cutting edge, and it looks a lot less wonky and wobbly. So at this stage, you are more or less done if you want, but like you saw in the beginning of the video, I want to add some undulation, some texture to the outside to make it more interesting. So I'm going to take my metal rib, and there's a slight corner on the bottom of the tool, or from the flat where it transitions to the curve. I'm going to use that to apply pressure to add lines, and I'm going to use my inside hand to support it, and I'm just going to work my way up and down like that. Now something that's so wide at the bottom that flares out can cause some issues where I push in and may collapse, but we'll see what it turns out to. And if you like it, you can give it a shot too. So for this purpose, I'm going to set the wheel at a nice speed. It's about like 1/8 the speed of the wheel, like full speed. I'm going to figure out where exactly I want to start the pressure. So I'm going to trim everything below this. So right around here, I'm going to kind of start it. Inside hand here to support. Really kind of tilt my head so I can see exactly where the tool is. Okay, and here we go. Maybe I should have spun the wheel a little faster. It's a little slow for my liking. See my lines almost crisscrossing with each other. Okay, and then fade it out. All right, and there we go. I got some undulation lines. Ooh, got some undulation lines. And then the inside got a little textured. You can see it from the top view, but not too bad. I'm just gonna take my sponge, kind of just smooth out some of my finger marks that I made. If I want to go back with a rib, I could apply pressure and smooth that out, but I'm actually okay with that. And then lastly, let's get my chamois around the rim, and let's cut this off. All right, switch the camera angle so it's straight on again. Grab the chamois, gently drape it over the clay at 3 o'clock to round that rim so it doesn't have that sharp angle. Very, very light pressure. I don't want to compress it down and make it mushroom out. And then grab the wooden knife. Let's cut the bottom, or create a groove at the bottom first. And then we'll wire it off. And then get the wire, put it down, spin the wheel slowly, and wire as it moves. There we go. Now let's check some final dimensions. I said 10 inches for the other piece. This one is a little under 9.5 by a little under 5. So a little narrower than the other bowl that we talked about in the beginning, but I still have the general shape that I wanted. So based on 4 pounds, you probably can get a little bigger if you want, if you're willing to really push the clay walls to get it thinner and taller. One thing though, the thinner your clay goes, the weaker it becomes, and the less efficient it is at holding in heat or coldness, because of course it's thinner. So it's really up to you. Oh, and of course, if the clay is thinner, it's not as robust, it's not as strong. So thicker bowls on larger sizes is always a plus. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the way we threw this bowl, and the really awesome thing with the techniques that I showed you scales perfectly for low amounts of clay all the way up to large amounts. Now there are more efficient ways to throw bowls like this where you pull and shape at the same time. It does take a little while to get used to, so if that's something that you folks want to see, let me know in the comments below and I can make that video as well. But in general, whenever I throw larger bowls like this technique is the one that I always go back to. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the making of this bowl. I hope you guys learned something new. And if you give it a shot, let me know in the comments how you liked it, or maybe if you didn't like it. And at this time, I do want to say a big mahalo to the Mud Club members. We revamped it. There's no Mud Club plus tier anymore. So the Mud Club has a lot more to offer than it previously did. So if you guys want to become a member, take a look at the description below. I have all of the awesome perks that you guys will receive. And in my community posts that I have, I actually outline everything that's readily available to you. So thank you to all the Mud Club members. And of course, mahalo for watching, and I hope to see you folks in the next video.